When I came home after 3 months, I saw flashing lights near my dock, and there she was. The HOA president, stepping out of my yacht in a bathrobe, holding coffee like she owned the place. My wife's ashes were on that boat. What said Dentino was that her little power trip just started a war she couldn't win. My name's Frank Delaney, retired Navy mechanic, widower, and keeper of the Maggie D. She's not just a boat. She's where my late wife's ashes rest beneath the mast, where the lake wind never stops singing. That boat is her, in every sense. After 3 months away visiting my daughter in Arizona, I was driving back home through the Michigan chill. That gray, quiet stretch of trees where the air starts to smell like home. My truck was full of luggage, but my heart was light. I just wanted to clean up the boat, sit in her cabin, and feel close to Maggie again. Then I saw the flashing lights, red and blue, bouncing off the frozen water. A sheriff's cruiser parked right in front of my dock. My dock. Slip bidose I pulled in fast. A young deputy stepped out, hand raised. Sir, you'll need to stay back. This is an active situation. Active situation. My gut twisted. That's my boat, I said, holding up my keys. The Maggie D. I own that slip. What's going on? He hesitated, checked a clipboard. We received a call about an unauthorized individual attempting to access a vessel under HOA custodianship. Custodianship. Before I could respond, the cabin door of my yacht slid open, and out stepped Karen Schulman, the new HOA president, in a plush white bathrobe, holding a steaming mug with the HOA logo on it, like she was hosting brunch. She smiled at the deputy. Officer, this is the man I told you about. He thinks this property still belongs to him. I froze. My boat. My wife's resting place. And this woman was living in it. Karen, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. What the hell are you doing on my boat? She took a dainty sip. It's not your boat anymore, Frank. It's been declared abandoned and placed under HOA custody for safety violations. The words hit like a punch. I walked back to my truck, grabbed the boat title, registration, and insurance papers. 30 years of ownership right there. Here, I said, handing them to the deputy. It's mine. Bought, paid for, and moored right here for 17 years. He looked through them, his tone softening. Looks valid, sir. But Karen wasn't done. She pulled out a crisp, manila folder. This is the emergency resolution passed 6 weeks ago. The vessel had a fuel leak. Under Bylaw 17, Section C, the HOA can assume custody of any property that threatens community safety. It was printed, official-looking, complete nonsense. The deputy sighed. Mr. Delaney, I can't determine ownership here. According to this document, they have temporary custody. If you stay, it could count as trespassing. Trespassing on my own boat? Karen smiled like she'd just checkmated me. So I nodded, turned my back, and walked away. But as I reached my truck, I looked back one last time and saw her standing on Maggie D's deck, watching me drive off like she'd conquered something. She had no idea what kind of storm she'd just started. That night, I sat in my recliner, staring out the window at the dark lake. The glow from my boat's cabin flickered faintly through the fog. She was in there, drinking coffee, living on my wife's grave. Karen had been HOA president for barely 6 months, and she'd already turned the neighborhood into her personal empire. It started with fines, $500 for peeling paint, $7 for unapproved lawn decor. She even made a widow remove her husband's memorial cross. People stopped fighting back. It was easier to pay up than deal with her. But she made one mistake. She picked a fight with a man who had nothing left to lose. The next morning, I pulled out the HOA bylaws and read every single page. I'd spent half my life reading Navy manuals. This was child's play, and sure enough, nothing in there allowed seizure of private property. Nothing. Nothing. But tucked inside the latest newsletter was a special meeting note. 5 attendees, Karen, her 2 cronies, and 2 confused residents. They'd slipped in a new clause giving themselves the power to remediate hazardous vessels. They wrote themselves permission to steal. I called the marina manager. "You let him take my boat?" He sounded nervous. "Frank, I had no choice. They said if I didn't hand over the keys, they'd cancel my contract. I've got a family." I didn't blame him. Karen ruled through fear, so I went straight to her throne, the HOA board meeting. I walked in calm, folder in hand. She was at the head of the table, wearing that smug, detached expression. When my turn came, I laid everything out. The ownership, papers, receipts, maintenance logs, all pristine. There was no fuel leak, I said. "You had no right to seize my property. I'm asking for immediate return of my vessel." Karen didn't even blink. She slid a paper across the table. An invoice, $1,200 for emergency contamination cleanup. Then she leaned in. "And due to your disruptive behavior, your access to the marina is suspended indefinitely. Step foot on those docks again, and you'll be arrested." The room went dead silent. That was her move. Humiliation, debt, isolation, but I didn't give her the satisfaction of anger. He just nodded, tucked the invoice into my folder, and left. Out on the frozen shoreline, I looked across the lake. The silhouette of the Maggie D floated like a ghost. A light still burned in her cabin. My wife's ashes inside. They'd declared war. 2 days later, a new gate went up at the marina. Chain link, keypad lock, big and ugly. I couldn't even get near my boat anymore. But word spreads fast in small towns. My neighbor Hieme menos había dambeth shuffled over one morning, hands in his pockets. "Frank," he whispered, "people been seeing things. Karen's son and his friends down at your boat. Looked like a party." My jaw clenched. "You sure it was mine?" He nodded. Maggie D. Clear as day. That image burned into my brain. Drunk kids trampling the deck, spilling beer where Maggie's ashes rested. The community was scared, beaten down. "It's not right, Frank," they'd whisper. "But what can we do? She's got the board in her pocket." But I wasn't afraid of her pocket. I was going for her throat. And the next morning, I drove to the county records office. Spent 2 hours filling out a formal grievance illegal seizure, falsified safety violation, fraudulent invoices. Every detail logged and stamped. The clerk told me, "You'll hear back in a few months." Months. Fine. I could wait, but I wouldn't wait quietly. That night, as I sat staring at the dark lake, I remembered an old name. Mike Skip Skelly, the best Marine inspector I'd ever known from my Navy days. I picked up the phone. "Skip! It's Frank Delaney!" A chuckle came through the line. "Frankie boy! Don't tell me you finally sunk that old tub." Not sunk. Stolen. I explained everything. The fake leak, the lock, the bogus paperwork. Long pause. Then he said, "That woman's cruising for a bruising. When do we do the inspection?" I smiled for the first time in weeks. "There's a problem," I said. "I'm banned from the docks." He just laughed. Good thing I'm not. Skip showed up 2 days later with a clipboard, a camera, and a high-waist jacket that said Marine Surveyor. He walked straight through the gate while Karen's son, stationed nearby, pretended not to notice. 2 hours later, he called me. "Frank, there's no leak, but there's something else." "What?" "Looks like someone tampered with the generator line cut and patched. It intentionally. And there's a camera system on board. 2 of them. Cameras. I'd never installed cameras." Skip handed the footage over that night. We watched it together at my kitchen table. The date stamp showed Karen boarding the Maggie D, with 2 men carrying boxers, and later, hosting what looked like a wine party inside my cabin. Then her son climbed aboard, laughing with his friends, tossing beer cans overboard. I had her. Skip wrote an official report, signed, sealed, notarized. Environmental status, clean. Tampering evidence, confirmed. Unauthorized occupancy. Documented. We sent copies to the sheriff, the HOA board, and the county office 10 we wait. 2 weeks later, the sheriff's cruiser was back at the dock. Same deputy, different reason. This time, he was the one waiting for her. Karen stormed down the path in her robe again, shouting about harassment. But when she saw the officer with Skip's report in hand, the color drained from her face. "Mrs. Schulman," the deputy said, "you are under investigation for unlawful property seizure, fraud, and environmental tampering." I stood behind him, quiet. She turned to me, eyes wide, voice trembling. "You can't do this." I just looked at her. "You did it to yourself." 2 months later, I got the official letter. Full ownership of Maggie D. restored. HOA fined for unlawful custodianship. Karen removed from office. When I walked back onto my boat for the first time, it was sunset. The cabin smelled faintly of Maggie's old cedar polish. I cleaned every inch until the decks gleamed again. Then I sat by the mast, hand resting on the urn. "Maggie," I whispered, "it's over. We're home again." The lake was still, the air soft. Across the water, the HOA office sat dark and empty. No lights, no laughter, no Karen. Just peace. And as the last bit of sunlight rippled across the deck, I realized something. They can steal your property. They can fake your papers. But they can't own your memories. Those belong to you forever.